Hey everybody, and welcome back to another command block tutorial. In today's video, we're gonna be launching nukes because I can. Watch your ears. Yep, that's right. We're making a nuke launcher that decimates everything in the area and then also leaves an area of radiation around the center of the nuke that lingers for a period of time with a built-in Geiger counter to show that you are in the radiation zone. Now, just to show you guys, it is actually a zone. I can back out of the radiation here, and you'll see in a second. I think I can get further. Oh, that's weird. It's a big zone. See, I'm out of the radiation zone, and nothing's weird. But I can go back into the radiation zone, and yeah, I get the fog, I get the Geiger counter, and there's some other stuff that goes on. In fact, I actually have a radiation-proof helmet on right now, which if I take it off, I actually get nausea, and if I wasn't in creative mode, I'd be taking damage. So there's a lot going on, and that's actually not all of it, because we also have mutations in the radiation zone. That's right. If we take a cow, we leave it in a radiation zone. Soon enough, it's gonna turn into a mushroom. Take a pig, give it some time. He turns into a hoglin, and will of course eventually turn into a zoglin if you're in the overworld. Villagers will turn into vindicators. Allays turn into Vex. Squid into glow squid. Horses into zombie horses in just a second. Also, the larger a thing is, the longer it takes to radiate and mutate. That's how it functions. We have the skeleton, which will turn into a bogged. We have the chicken, which turns into a baby strider. We have the frog, which doesn't actually transform into anything, but it does have the oozing effect, meaning if you kill it, it's going to spawn slimes. And lastly, we have the sheep, which just basically becomes hairless due to the radiation. Now, I do actually want to get rid of these mobs for the sake of the tutorial. If only I had a really effective way of doing that. So as you can see, it's a really effective nuke. It just decimates everything in the area. It does so much damage in a large area. In fact, if I were in adventure mode, that would have killed me. So it is a very effective weapon, including all the radiation and stuff that you guys see going on here. It is a lot of commands, but don't worry, if you guys don't want all of these features, you don't actually have to add all of them. Perhaps you don't want the radiation at all, that's fine, you don't have to add it, and I'll show you how to do that. If you don't want the mutations, that's fine, you don't have to add that, I'll show you how to do that. But what we have here is just a really fun and effective and devastating weapon to bring into your survival world. And also, I just think the mushroom cloud looks really cool. But let's get started on the tutorial. Before I do that, I'm actually going to clear out the radiation. And the way we're going to do that is we're just going to kill tag equals nuke. So before we get into the actual commands, I'm going to do kind of a step-by-step process explanation of what is actually going on with our commands, what's kind of happening behind the scenes before we get into the commands, so that way you guys can get into it and understand what's happening much easier. So what we're doing is, of course, we're doing a diamond horse armor, and we are basically sneaking. This is what actually launches the nuke. The nuke then travels slowly at an arc until it comes into contact with a block, at which point the nuke will explode, doing, I think, 200 damage, but probably even more than that to any mob in the area, which is enough to kill anything short of the bosses, essentially, but of course you can adjust that to make it a one-tap kill on any boss or any mob in the entire game if you want. Then, after it does the initial explosion, it's going to blind any players nearby, and then once the blindness clears, it's actually going to start slowly rising up in the mushroom cloud formation that you guys saw. Now, after it's done being this cloud, the cloud's going to kind of dissipate, and then the radiation sets in. So when the radiation sets in, you guys obviously saw that the whole sky around us turns red. Animals in the radiation zone mutate. The player during the radiation zone is going to take damage and be sick, essentially from radiation sickness, unless they're wearing a netherite helmet. And yeah, there's just a whole lot of stuff. Now, the radiation will fade away eventually. I'll show you how to adjust the timers on that. But yeah, there's a lot going on, so I really hope you guys enjoy. And I apologize because it will be a long tutorial, but don't worry, I will show you some optional stuff that you guys can take out to make it a bit easier if you don't want to type out all the commands that you see here. So, the first is pretty simple stuff that you guys have seen me do before. All we're doing is checking is the player holding a diamond horse armor in their hand, and they're sneaking, and they don't have the tag nuke shot. This tag here essentially counts as the player already fired the nuke in this sneak, because you don't want to fully automatically fire nukes. I mean, you could, but you probably don't want to do that. The next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to, because we summoned the boat like 160 blocks above the player, we're also going to give the tag nuke to the boat. That's what this command does right here. It's checking the same things. Does the player not have the tag, holding horse armor, holding, and sneaking, essentially. Lastly, we're going to give them the tag nuke shot. This is what prevents them from doing more than one boat per sneak. And of course, we're going to make it so that the player removes nuke shot every time they are not sneaking. Pretty simple stuff. That just makes it so as soon as you unsneak, you're ready to fire again. Now you might be asking, can you rapidly fire off nukes? The answer is yes. But you will be blind for a significant portion of time. Oh, there's another one. And as you can see, we have some camera shake, we have some Geiger counter noises, all that kind of funky stuff. But for now, we're going to kill the nukes. So, the other thing that is important to note, and actually I do want to fire another nuke, is what happens after the nuke explodes. Obviously, when we first throw it, the nuke is moving. Oh, I'm going to land it right in that ravine. Nope. So as you can see, we have the mushroom cloud rises up from the sky, and even after it fades, we actually do have a boat hidden in the sky. Way up here is actually the nuke. Now, you won't be able to even see it from the ground, especially with the radiation effects going on, but this is essentially the center of the radiation zone, except it's just going 160 blocks down. So even after it lands, we're actually still using the boat to be the center of the cloud and the center of the radiation zone. And of course, as soon as we get rid of it, everything just loads back in like normal. What is that? What in the world? Alright. That has nothing to do with me. I don't know what that is. Alright, back to the commands. The next set of commands that we're doing is essentially moving it. So what we want to do is, right now, the nuke has the tag nuke, and it has no other tags. But we're going to be giving it different tags at different points in the stage of this nuke's life cycle. So the first tag that you guys are going to see is the tag boom. This is just the initial explosion. This is essentially when it hits a block, it's going to get the tag boom. Once it has the tag boom, it's going to do the blinding, the explosion, the damage, that kind of stuff. Then it's going to remove the tag boom and give it the tag cloud. The cloud is going to control, obviously, the cloud as well as the beginning of the radiation effect. Finally, it's going to have the tag radiation. When it has the tag radiation, that means it's in the final phase of just coating a zone in heavy radiation. What we're doing here is making sure that as long as the nuke has none of those tags, as in it's still in the projectile form, then it's going to be teleporting itself 0.6 blocks forward, facing this. This right here just makes it so it slowly arcs down over time. Next up, we're going to be looking at the nuke and just running a particle. Keep in mind we are moving the particle 158 blocks down because the boat is actually significantly higher than where the nuke itself is. So keep that in mind. Most of these commands are actually going to be moving downwards because we have to account for the nuke actually being in the sky. Alright, next up, this is what's going to be actually checking if the nuke hits a block, and if so, it's going to get the tag boom. All we're doing is executing at the nuke that doesn't have cloud, doesn't have radiation. Unless the block right here is air, then it's going to add the tag boom. Essentially, once again, if it hits a block, it gets the tag boom. Pretty simple. Now we're going to actually be looking at the nuke. So essentially, what we're doing right here is If it has the tag boom, just teleport itself in place. We don't want it to fall out of the sky, and we don't want it to keep moving forward, so we have to use separate TP commands. Next up, we're going to actually be doing the camera flash. This is what you guys obviously saw when I detonated the nuke. So we're just executing at the nuke with the tag boom. We're going down 160 blocks and doing the camera fade command. This is what makes your screen go almost instantly white and slowly fade back. We're just doing a fade time with the color 255, 255, 255, which is the color white. Next up, we're going to be doing a couple of different play sounds. So this is the same command except for the play sounds and the camera effects. It's just going to essentially execute at any player within 200 blocks. That way the sound is loudest, essentially. We do the random explode sound at P with a really high volume, which doesn't actually make it louder, it just increases the range it can be heard. And a 0.3 pitch, that's just going to affect it and make the explosion slower. Next up, exact same command, but with a 0.5 pitch. Once again, the same command with a 0.9 pitch. You might be wondering why we're doing this. Essentially, this overlays different explosion noises that are a little bit different than each other. That really just makes the nuke sound a little bit more realistic. And we have one more explosion, which I have 1.4. And then next up, we're going to be doing something similar, but with the item Trident Riptide. Similar command, except just a different sound file. This adds kind of like a whooshing sound wind effect, like what you would expect to hear from the nuclear bomb. I think I just clicked the same command. No, I did not. The next thing we're going to be doing is, of course, adding a camera shake. So this means that as the player is coming out of blind, their whole camera is going to be shaking, which, you know, if a nuke went off near you, you would expect a little bit of shaking. That, of course, is even if you survive. Next up is the damage, and this is obviously where things get a little bit trickier, and this is also, more importantly, something you can really easily adjust. Essentially, we're looking at the nuke, we're going down 160 blocks, and we are damaging anything within a 60 block radius, of course that's not the nuke itself, with 200 entity explosion damage. Now, 200 is enough to kill nearly everything, so if you want to make it like 2,000, you're not going to have much of a difference except for on the boss mobs like the Warden, Wither, and Ender Dragon. But I mean, it is a nuke. If you want to have it kill the Warden, that seems fair, right? So, once again, adjust this to what you want, and also make this radius as big or as little as you want. Do keep in mind that if you're using this in survival at a radius of 60, you need to throw this actually really far away from you in order to not get instantly obliterated yourself. Next, what we're going to be doing is giving the nuke with the tag boom, the tag cloud, and anything with the tag cloud, we're going to remove the tag boom. This just gets the nuke ready to be in its second phase of having the actual mushroom cloud come up from the ground. Next, we're going to be, once again, teleporting the nuke with the tag cloud in place, similar to what we did with the boom tag. Then we're going to actually start doing a bunch of different particles. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is executing right at the cloud nuke, and we are going to be running this particle right here, 156 blocks down. This is basically the center of the nuclear explosion. That's the very first particle that's going to appear. But now we need to start talking about the actual timer. So right here, we do need to make this scoreboard objectives P timer, which is projectile timer. P timer is what I like to use. Just type this into your chat bar. As you see it, type it into a command block and power it. Doesn't matter, but you do need to type this at some point in order to create the timer. Because when we get to the next one, we're going to see that we have the almost exact same command, except the P timer is 4 or higher, and the particle itself is actually going to be a little bit higher in the sky. The reason that we're doing this is that it looks a lot better if the smoke cloud slowly rises than if it all just appears instantly. Now, I actually forget where I put the timer. Give me 1 second. It's right here. It is right here. So essentially what we are doing, this is slightly out of order, but on a 10 tick delay, we're doing scoreboard players add at E, tag equals cloud, nuke, P timer 1. This just means that once it has the tag cloud, the timer's going to start counting up. So I do have it slightly out of order. It is in this chain. I will get back to this in order to keep going in order. Do keep in mind the timer's right here. So back to where we just were. This is just the same command, but the particle is a bit higher and the timer is in it. Now in the next one, we're just doing 1 second later effectively in the timer, technically half a second, and we're just making the particle higher. Once more, we're doing the same thing, it's just a little bit later on the timer, and the particle is even higher. Timer higher, particle higher. Pretty simple. Now we're doing something a little bit different. So we have the P timer set to 8, but we're actually going 7 blocks out to the side, and in fact slightly lower than the last command. This is going to actually do the effect of the mushroom cap. So we're going to have 4 commands like this, with going out to the side slightly in each direction, and this is going to give the effect of the mushroom. So we have the same thing with the -7, same thing with the -7 at the rear, and then same thing with the +7. All of these were on the same timer. This is, like I said, just going to give the cap of the mushroom effect, essentially. And lastly, we are going to do this at the center. This is actually right at the epicenter. This just gives the very center of the nuke a slightly different explosion on top of it. Essentially 2 different particles to make the explosion look even denser at the center. Now, that's essentially it for the mushroom cap. So we do need to actually go over the timer, and then pretty soon I'm going to show you where you guys can stop early if some of these features are not something you want. So, first thing that we can do is radiation. Essentially, we're looking if the nuke has the tag radiation, it's going to teleport itself in place, similar to what we did over here with the cloud. Now we're going to actually start looking at the timer. So, anything with the tag cloud and the tag nuke is going to have a P timer of 1. It's going to start slowly adding up on a 10-tick delay. Now we're actually going to be doing this so that if the cloud, once again, this is not at radiation yet, has a P timer of 14 or higher, it's going to get the radiation tag. And lastly, we're going to have it so that once the cloud has the radiation tag and its P timer is 14 or higher, it's actually going to remove cloud. So it's no longer the cloud, it's only the radiation. This is to prevent the cloud particles from continuing to happen, because you would expect them to fade away. Now, something that you can do instead is remove these 2 command blocks, these 2 chain blocks, and then do something along the lines of this command. If you have this command instead of these 2, this is going to make it so the radiation zone doesn't happen. If you just want a more simple nuclear explosion without the radiation zone, just have this command instead of these 2, and then you don't have to worry about any of this stuff. That's right, if you want to be done, you don't want the radiation, replace these 2 with this one, and forget about the rest of this tutorial. You're done. Enjoy your nuke. But if you do want to keep going with the radiation, we'll keep doing that. First thing that we're going to be doing is adding P timer to anything with radiation. So if you remember, we're already at 14. Now it's just going to keep adding up on the timer on a 10-tick delay. The other thing that we want to do is eventually kill it. So keep in mind that we have it on a 10-tick delay, so it's going up every half second. So effectively what we have here, we're killing the radiation whenever it hits P timer of 500 or higher. So essentially 250 seconds after the nuke goes off, it's actually going to get rid of the radiation. If you want the radiation to last longer, you can make this number far higher. If you want it to last far shorter, make this number far lower. That is entirely up to you guys, so make this however long you guys want your radiation to last. Keep in mind that whatever number you put here, divide that by 2, that's how many seconds it's around. Next up, we're going to be doing the actual fog. So, what we're doing here, and actually I should preface something. I've known fog has been in the game for a long time. I don't think I've ever actually used it in a command creation that I've done in a tutorial. In fact, although I've used the fog command, I've messed around with it, I don't think I've ever actually used it in any project I've ever been a part of. So this was a suggestion as I was doing this on live stream to add the fog effects, and I think it actually works really well in this one instance. The thing I don't like about the fog is that, well, let me show you. Wait for a second. As you can see, we're in the nuclear zone. If you ask me, it's a bit weird that the sky is completely blue and then the area around us is red, which I found for most things doesn't really work. However, I think for a radiation zone, this fog actually works really well. So this is the first time I've ever actually used the fog command in a tutorial. For many of you, this might be the first time you use the fog command ever. In fact, I imagine some of you have never even heard of it because it's a very niche command that's been around for a while, but just doesn't have a ton of uses. So the fog command is a little bit interesting, and I guess this is going to be somewhat of a fog tutorial. It's weird because when you use the fog commands, you actually don't just say, hey, I want this fog. What you do is use the fog, use the target selector, and of course what we're doing here is just making that at the nuke if the P timer is 5 or higher, and any entities within 200 blocks is going to have the fog command at them. That's what this add s is. What that actually means, of course, is the fog is going to push a fog type and we have to name it. So we chose the fog hell because that's the fog that's in the nether. We are pushing that onto the player and we are calling it nuke. So you can imagine this is sort of like maybe a special tag or something like that. So the tag itself is nuke, and the property that it gives is just the fog hell, or this red fog that you see around us. I say all this to point out in the next commands, we're doing something very similar, except if the player is no longer in range of the radiation, we're gonna pop the nuke, which is a weird little thing that we do with the fog commands. But to simplify it, essentially, if the player is within the radiation zone, we're going to push a fog type of hell, calling it nuke. In the next command, if they are not in range of the radiation, we're going to pop the nuke. So essentially, the fog that we added here, we named it nuke. In this command, we're removing it and just calling it by the same name. It's a bit weird that they added fog in this way, but hey, it's their commands, man. I just use them. That's all. That's your little mini fog tutorial in the middle of this tutorial. This is gonna be a long tutorial, isn't it? All right. Next up, the cowbell.
Guess what? I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
Executing at the radiation, so essentially any player in the radiation zone is going to have the note cowbell played at them at a low volume at a 0.4 pitch on a 3-tick delay. Additionally, on a 4-tick delay, exactly the same thing. This is kind of our simulation of the Geiger counter that you guys can hear in the background whenever you're in a radiation zone. You guys can adjust this. This is what me and Stream kind of decided on and what we felt sounded best, but if you guys have an idea on how to make the Geiger counter sound a little bit better, or perhaps you don't even want it, feel free to adjust these commands as you see fit. Next up, radiation damage. All we're doing here is pretty simple. We're executing at the radiation zone for any player that's inside of it that is not wearing a netherite helmet. So we're using has item, netherite helmet in their head slot with a quantity of 0, so they're not wearing it. And we are doing 1 damage of the override type. This just surpasses all armor, it's not really important. We are doing this on an 80-tick delay, so it's not going to be happening that often, but of course you can adjust this, remove it, increase it to whatever you want. Another thing to note is if you want to do something other than a netherite helmet, just adjust this has item. Similar to the damage, we're also giving nausea. This is almost exactly the same command with a netherite helmet and just the nausea effect. Pretty simple stuff. It's the exact same command. Oh, look at that, the beautiful sky. Next up, I should actually mention, that is it for the player side of the radiation. The following commands are just for the mutations that you saw. I will also mention there's more possible mutations. There's actually quite a lot of mutations in Minecraft that, quite frankly, make a lot of sense. For instance, you could be trading zombies into drowns or wolves into ravagers, things like this. You guys can do that absolutely on your own. I will give you the format on how you can transform mobs like this. It's entirely up to you, but I did provide some examples, not every example. There's plenty more that you guys can add. But if you guys don't care about the mutations, do this and you're done. If you want mutations, we'll keep going. First thing that we're doing makes no sense, and I actually didn't even have this on. First thing that we're doing is at 0, 0, or 0, -70, 0, I'm just going to kill anything within 10 blocks. You might be curious as to why we're doing that. Essentially, what we're doing when we transform a mob, like taking this cow into a mushroom, is we're actually going to teleport the cow to the void, kill it with this command, and then replace it with a mushroom. Yay! Now, I know you guys are all going to be saying, why don't you just use commands, because cows can already turn into mushrooms? For some reason, I know we can strike them with lightning, but I want to avoid striking things with lightning because it would look weird. For some reason in Minecraft, with commands, you can turn mushrooms back into cows, but you cannot turn cows into mushrooms with the event commands. I don't know why, but that's the situation. So, just to show you, I'm going to fire off a nuke, put us back in the radiation zone. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is there is a 120 tick delay. I did different tick delays. Essentially, the larger a mob is, the longer it takes, the more of a delay, so the less likely it is to radiate, although all the things will mutate fairly quickly. All we're doing, though, is just executing at the cow, give it a few seconds. The cow's going to go to the void and become a mushroom. Pretty simple. So, let's look at the commands. What we're doing is we're executing within the radiation zone, is what all of this stuff is. Also 200 block radius is the radiation zone radius. And we're just summoning a mushroom at any cow. Now I should also mention that we are copying the rotation. So we're doing the same coordinates, and then these two squiggles copy the rotation, so it actually looks even more like a transformation. Now I should mention that all these chain commands are on a 0 tick delay, because after we summon the mushroom, we are going to teleport it down to the void. Teleport the cow down to the void. Everyone shout "in the void" in the comments. I better hear it. In the void, 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 in the void. Alright, next up is going to be exactly the same thing. In fact, most of these are going to be the same thing. Right here, you guys will see this is exactly the same command, except we have pig and hoglin instead of cow and mushroom. And then pig here in the second command. Only thing that's different is the tick delay. For the villager, 80 tick delay. Should mention, the actual tick delays aren't super important. You can adjust these to whatever you want. Villager, vindicator. Villager. 60 tick delay. Summon Vex, allay. Allay. You guys can get the pattern. Squid into glow squid. Get rid of the squid. Zombie horse from a horse. Get rid of the horse. I'm not going to go over all of these in depth. You guys can figure what's happening. Skeleton, turn into bogged. Get rid of the skeleton. Chicken, this is slightly different. I will point that out. Turning the chicken into a baby strider. So the only difference here is that after summon strider, we actually add spawn baby. This just guarantees it's a baby strider because the normal striders are much bigger than a chicken, and a baby works a lot better. And yeah, just chicken. Get rid of the chicken. Same as the other ones. The last two are the ones that are a little bit different. For the frog, all we're giving it is the oozing effect. Pretty simple. And lastly, for the sheep, we're actually using the event entity command to essentially shear the sheep automatically and turn all the sheep hairless like I demonstrated earlier. So, pretty simple stuff, and of course, there's plenty of more mutations that you guys can choose to add on your own, and in fact, I really encourage you to do that. Simply copy the same commands that you've seen with the examples I've shown and just change the mobs however you would like. And that is actually it. If you guys have successfully implemented all of these commands, you now have your own radiation spreading, world ending, miniature nuke launching thing of death and destruction. And yeah, why you need this, I don't know. Why you'd want it? Well, it's quite fun. So if you guys need any help, number one thing is, if you guys say it's not working, please just make sure you don't have typos. It's quite often the case that you guys just have a typo. In a command project that's as big as this, having a typo too is pretty likely. If you do need help though, feel free to reach out in the comments or join the Discord, the link for which will be in the description, because if you join the Discord, It's always better than asking in the comments because other people are able to help you. You're able to send screenshots. It's a lot easier than asking for help in the comments. And you also get to be part of the Discord, really great command community. You get updates from me, that kind of stuff. Anyways, this is a really long project, so I hope you guys enjoyed. This was something done on stream. I occasionally stream and actually make something that you guys request. So if you guys would like to maybe see your requests made by me into commands and then later into a tutorial, I suggest you subscribe and turn on those notifications. Not to sound like the basic YouTuber, but just because I don't actually schedule my streams. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and bye.